everybody remembers when we did Force the Vote, which is when we tried to get the members of the squad to withhold their vote from Nancy Pelosi until she agreed to something for them to do. And so for me trying to get a vote on Medicare for all, that's what we chose. They didn't do it. And the people who urged them, the organizers, I was one of the organizers of Force the Vote, she dismissed us, never actually talked to us directly, and said we were committing violence. She said it's a bummer to see figures excuse comments like F her and F anyone who protects her. That's not tone, that's violence. No, I'm pretty sure that's tone. Those are words. That's not violence. That's why there's two different words. One is a word, and then one is violence. Those are two different things. But we're carrying this on, right? So here's this woman, Taylor Lorenz, right? Now, she's a horrible person, and she makes her living eavesdropping on people's private conversations and then misreporting them and then ruining their lives and careers. And so when people push back, because now we get to talk to the elites on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, we actually get to have regular people get to have a voice, and they don't like that. And so now, after she runs around lying about people and ruining their lives and smearing them on the front page of the New York Times, she now has the balls to pretend she's a victim. Why? Because she has a vagina, apparently. If you have a vagina and you do journalism, you're a special kind of victim. And she's going to tell you right here.
I've had to remove every single social tie. I had severe PTSD from this. I contemplated suicide. It got really bad. You feel like any little piece of information that gets out on you will be used by the worst people on the internet to destroy your life. And
would that be you? Would that be you? She's one of the worst people on the internet. Make no mistake about it. She's one of the worst people on the internet. And here we go.
So isolating. And terrifying.
Terrifying.
It's horrifying.
It's horrifying. Oh, here she goes. By the way, she's acting. She's not actually crying.
I didn't want to say that because I can't prove it, but when that little added cry did seem like it might have been maybe not the most sincere.
Not sincere. I'm going to challenge the veracity of her crying. So that's what's called a cry bully. That woman, Taylor Lorenz, is the worst type of bully in the world. And she has a big platform, front page of the New York Times. She's the opposite of a victim. She's the bully. And now because she's a woman, everybody's supposed to feel sorry for her when people say mean things to her on Twitter. Hey, welcome to life. Welcome to life. That's what happens on Twitter. Do you know how many horrible things? I just had a congresswoman say I was committing violence against her, which is a horrendous lie, which got so much hate thrown at me, article after article, not randos on Twitter, actual articles in mainstream publications that were ripping me unfairly, of course, and disingenuously and lying, just like Taylor Lorenz is a liar. And she works for the most powerful media organization, New York Times, and somehow you have to worry about her feelings. Hey, if you have PTSD from reporting on TikTok, then journalism isn't for you.
I have PTSD just from listening to that.
No kidding.
I started writing about this. I covered Taylor Lorenz's saga here, or at least the beginnings of it, around a year ago, because it was a typification of a new kind of mentality that had become increasingly dominant within, especially media and political spheres. AOC best typifies this within the political sphere for reasons that you just alluded to, in terms of her proclivity to accuse anyone who is critical of her of somehow fomenting violence against her by just trying to do substantive criticism of her as a political figure. And I was on the receiving end of that attack as well, and accused of somehow compounding her trauma because I pointed out that there was some emotional manipulation going on. I don't know if you recall this, but after January 6th, she did this extremely melodramatic live stream on Instagram where she's recounting in harrowing detail how she felt that she was on the verge of being murdered by the marauding MAGA rioters, and it turned out that she was actually safely stowed away in this house office building, and police were trying to protect her, and she thought they were actually trying to come attack her or whatnot. And she did this whole live stream, and she just kind of shoehorned in this claim that she had been sexually assaulted. Maybe she has. I don't know. I can only go based on what her word. But she invoked that precedent of a sexual assault for a very specific reason. She was saying that anybody who questions her account of January 6th is doing an equivalent of what someone would do if they were questioning her account of her sexual assault, meaning they're gaslighting her or they're re-traumatizing her or compounding her harm. And that's a sort of mode of rhetoric that a lot of more younger politicians, especially on the progressive side of the quote aisle, are employing to great effect to stifle criticism of themselves. And to actually flip the script where they're saying the average citizen must offer sympathy to the politician,
yes,
because of all they've gone through,
yes,
rather than the politician having an obligation to deliver on behalf of the citizens.
That's right.
Right, which kind of gets to why there was this whole pushback against you for demanding your preferred strategy around the healthcare vote. Right, it's a similar story. And Taylor Lorenz is a pioneer of bringing this mentality into the media, right? Because Taylor Lorenz, the tweet from Greenwald that seemed to launch this, which is now being studied. I mean, NYU, New York University, has this whole center for social media and politics studies. Yeah.
Let me show, I have a video that's going to explain that. Okay. So before you do, let me just show what these people have said. This is what Chant Misrobian has said. He said the point of this is to silence certain modes of political speech by characterizing it as harassment and deploying groups of supposedly marginalized and oppressed people who aren't at all marginalized or oppressed, but are in fact elite enforcers of a dominant political regime. That's exactly what's going on here, right? This is to shut you up. Glenn says all of this is designed to fortify a warped and inverted matrix of power and morality. Somehow the bullies have converted themselves into the bullied. Your deepest concern and compassion must be directed to the richest, most powerful, and most privileged members of society. And here's Chuck Todd. So they did a whole segment on this. That was a clip out of that segment. So let's watch what Chuck Todd said on Meet the Press about this.
This week.
What, do you want to say something, Michael?
I was just going to say, I've watched, this is one of the funniest cable news clips I've ever seen in my life, this whole segment. And I love how Chuck Todd introduces it with this solemn intonation about how very important this issue is of women journalists facing harassment online. It's like he's talking about, some controversy around the stewardship of the nuclear codes or something.
Yes.
But it's about, MSNBC journalists getting mean tweets. He's so kind of deadly serious about it. It's so funny.
Watch that. Here we go. Here we go.
This week, the White House proclaimed April as National Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. One of the fastest growing threats to women is online harassment. The latest government statistics show 1 in 3 women under the age of 35 have experienced a type of essentially sexual harassment online. It's
which also known as not harassment. That's like that story we did. Woman claimed she was groped in the metaverse, which means she wasn't groped. So if you could consider mean tweets to be sexual harassment or any kind of actual harassment, then I'm the biggest victim of that in the world. And so
they're going to show a graph on this where, they're going to show a graph on this where it's like 70-something% of women say that they have been attacked online, meaning women journalists. So what does it mean to be attacked online?
What does that mean?
Harshly criticized because somebody doesn't like what you've written? Is that an online attack? Well, we're just going based on self-reportage, apparently. So if somebody doesn't like the tenor of the criticism against them, then they tell these NYU survey takers that they've been attacked online, and somehow that's some kind of catastrophe that requires, I don't know, a political intervention, or for the tech companies to institute greater censorship to make sure that these journalists aren't subject to ridicule, which is, which they deserve.
So let's watch.
Yes, they do.
Watch this.
And underreported, and many times not taken seriously, despite its serious risk to mental health and physical safety. The Biden administration is now committed to a new global partnership for action on gender-based online harassment and abuse. The goal: deliver an action plan on combating technology-facilitated gender-based violence by the end of this year. Morgan Radford joins me now. She's been doing some reporting on the impact of this type of harassment.
This is not
real intrepid reporting that Morgan's been doing.
This is not a sketch. This is not a I had to keep pinching myself because it seems like this is a comedy sketch, but it's not.
It does.
These are serious grown-up people being serious. Okay.
Especially the impact it has on women in journalism, and it's not even a close call, Morgan. As nasty as the attacks can be on some of us in this business, if you're a woman, it is at another level.
Why? What would be the evidence of that? When you say at another level, people say meaner things to you? Then they want you to get hit. They want you to get beat up. They want you to die. They call you every name. I've been called. There's not a name that I haven't been called. So how could it be worse?
Same here. I mean, I grant that it's conceivable that if I were a woman, I would receive more attacks around my physical appearance and such. But that being said, I happen to be a male, and I happen to receive people attacking my physical appearance probably 10 billion times a day.
In fact,
I realize I'm not a supermodel, but it doesn't seem like my gender insulates me from that attack. And I can accept that there might be a greater proportion of these attacks against women, but this whole framing that it's a specifically gender-related problem at least doesn't register as, or doesn't scan as true for me, and I'm sure you, Jimmy, given the intensity of the attacks.
The hatred on me, because a lot of people hate me way more than they hate Taylor Lorenz, I'll tell you that. And I'm sure I get a lot more flack than she ever gets. Okay, let's go.
That's right, Chuck. And before this was all sort of anecdotal, but now we have hard data.
Now we've got
this is
data.
One of the biggest issues facing
this is hard data. Right? The NYU Center for Social Media and Politics has finally heroically produced the hard data.
Hard data.
It's like they went to a lab and they finally figured out the right chemical formula for some magical new potion or something, and they have the hard data. I mean, it's not just BS social science stuff that was all constructed around attaining a certain political outcome. Definitely not. I mean,
right. So
their antipathy toward Greenwald and Tucker Carlson had nothing to do with any kind of preordained conclusion, right, that justified their construction of this data. No, it's just pure, objective, empirical discovery that now gives us this insight. Thanks, Morgan.
And here it comes.
Now, and an unprecedented study is giving us a closer look at just how some of those online attacks against female journalists are actually getting started and what it looks like for those who are on the receiving end. But a warning to our viewers, some of the language you hear in this report, it may be disturbing.
Warning.
Female reporters are often at the center of the bullseye. 73% of women journalists saying they've experienced online attacks.
What percent? Can you say what percentage of male journalists have received online attacks? Because I've tried to attack every one of them, so I'm going to guess 100%. So, and
the thing is, Jimmy, I mean, this shouldn't even really about like who gets more attacks, male journalists versus female journalists. I'm sure they both do, and maybe it's even plausible that female journalists get a greater intensity of attacks on the basis of looks or whatever. That's within the realm of plausibility. What's so asinine about this is their insistence on formulating this bizarre, self-aggrandizing narrative where they're these righteous victims of something because of mean tweets. I mean, this used to, not long ago, any fixation on this on the part of journalists would be rightly dismissed as ridiculous myopia, but now they're holding it out here as like the new frontier in online kind of ethical conundrums that the entire society must be oriented around, like redressing on behalf of the journalists. I mean, it's insane.
This is insane. Here we go.
While 30% say it has impacted their work.
I don't know if I can say this on TV. I'm going to rape you.
Someone wrote the words, "I'm going to rape you."
Yep.
Journalist Taylor Lorenz is a columnist.
I don't know what to say about that.
Jimmy, imagine if I went on Fox News, okay? Imagine if I went on Fox News and I read aloud from my phone
the stuff people said.
Mean tweets. Do you think that would be warmly received? you think I would be depicted as a sympathetic character for focusing on that and trying to present myself
no,
as
people would make
a victim,
fun of you.
or even as like an example that kind of represented some wider trend? I mean, I actually believe that Taylor Lorenz is sincere here. That's the most disturbing part. I think she's sincerely invested in this idea of her as an emblem for this scourge of so-called online harassment, and she also genuinely believes that online harassment / violence is one of the great political dilemmas of our time, and she feels like she's a trailblazer to address that problem, and she genuinely thinks that, and people support her in this belief. They validate her, and she progresses up the career ladder on the basis of this belief. I mean, I almost even like to focus on Taylor Lorenz herself. It's more that she so perfectly exemplifies the warped incentive structure of contemporary elite media.
She certainly does. Here we go.
The Washington Post, and was targeted nearly 1 year ago in a segment on Fox News.
She's at the very top of journalism's repulsive little food chain.
Host Tucker Carlson mocking her after she called for an end to online harassment. Now she's at the center of a new study by NYU researchers, among the first to actually quantify online hate against female journalists.
This is the moment that Carlson aired that segment.
Yes, we see this really dramatic rise.
So I want to make a point about that.
This whole pretension that they've somehow empirically quantified anything.
Yeah, look,
is just
Tucker
total
Carlson,
BS. This is not even a peer-reviewed study. I mean, I'm not even I don't even fetishize peer review necessarily, but like this is just basically a blog item as far as I can tell that was posted on the NYU website in conjunction with the Brookings Institution. I'm sure one of like the premier DC establishment think tanks, Brookings Institution, that actually co-produced this study of some sort, is just totally altruistically committed to the alleviation of suffering, and that's why they decided to focus on this issue. Right.
This is infantilizing women. That's what this is. This is women need special protection to be in the workplace. Women need special protection to be on Twitter. Women need special protection to be journalists. Women are fragile, delicate little bunnies, and they shouldn't be allowed out into the world without a male chaperone to protect them. That's what they're saying. That's what this is. This is the most insulting shit to women in the fucking world. But of course, that's all they've got now is identity politics and victimization and victimhood. And it's a big competition to see who can be a bigger victim. And I'll tell you who's on the lowest rung of that is a white male. I'll never be considered a victim no matter what fucking happens to me. But she is, just because she has a vagina, even though she's a horrible person and a shitty journalist. And she deserves almost every piece. She deserves a lot of criticism. Right? No one deserves threats or harassment. We all get it. We all get it constantly. By the way, she does it to other people. I'm going to show you that in a second. So watch this.
Large-scale data to measure online language.
And by the way, they talk about Tucker Carlson did a segment about her, a writer who appears on the front page of the New York Times. She's not a victim, and she's not a little girl. She's a grown-up journalist who specializes in ruining other people's lives and careers. Okay? That's who Taylor Lorenz is. How come nobody did you guys do a survey on all the attacks that Tucker Carlson got after you did this segment? Did you graph it out about all the attacks Tucker Carlson got on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram after you did this segment? Did you graph it out? No, you didn't. Because Tucker Carlson is called, again, like everybody on Twitter, he's called every name in the book. Some deservedly, some undeservedly. He's called a neo-Nazi, a white supremacist. He's called all those. No matter what you can think of, he's been called it. Where is your but he's deserving of that, and she's not, apparently. She is deserving of criticism, that's for sure. Okay, here we go.
They tracked violent and threatening tweets directed at 2 female journalists after being targeted.
Hey, would you do that for me? Why doesn't NYU do that for me and Michael Tracy? Would you track all the fucking angry tweets that come our way and then do a segment on it? No, you're never going to do that because it doesn't fit your stupid narrative.
Look at the screen right now, right? It shows the original tweet from Greenwald that supposedly launched this tsunami of violent harassment of Taylor Lorenz. What Greenwald says is very anodyne, and I remember this. He's not calling her to be raped or anything ridiculous.
Here, he said
he's saying that Taylor.
I'll read it to you. He says Taylor Lorenz is a star reporter with the most influential newspaper in the United States, arguably in the West. Her work regularly appears on its front page. Her attempt to claim this level of victimhood is revolting. She should try to find out what real persecution of journalists entails. See what's happening to Julian Assange? That's real persecution. Edward Snowden? That's real persecution. The government trying to put Glenn in jail in Brazil? That's real persecution. That's called persecution. People getting killed in war zone? That's persecution. What's happening to Daniel Hale? That's real persecution. What's happening to Taylor Lorenz is what's called par for the course. Welcome to the world. And if you don't like it, quit.
Ultimately, what Greenwald did in that tweet, though, he was making a substantive point, right? He wasn't calling for harassment per se. And yet what happens? Well, over a year later, they're somehow fixated on this one tweet from Greenwald as somehow ushering in this avalanche of violent harassment against Taylor Lorenz. And what does it have the effect of doing? It has the effect of stigmatizing genuine substantive criticism against some of the most influential people in the entire country, which include Taylor Lorenz at the time being a New York Times reporter. And she's now at the Washington Post. And I think this is actually an interesting point, because when you play that clip of her, breaking down into tears or whatever, I actually don't even remember if we got to that on the segment yet, but this whole facade that she puts on in this NBC segment comes off as comical, and like you and I, maybe some of the people watching, can think to themselves, wait, people really take this seriously? How is that possible? The scary thing is the media industry takes it deadly seriously. They regard Taylor Lorenz as like the paradigmatic example of bravery in the current media climate, which is why Taylor Lorenz was poached from the New York Times to the Washington Post. So they lured her because they were so desperate to get somebody of her pedigree to transition from the New York Times to the Washington Post. She's considered that hot of a commodity that there's actually competition amongst journalism outlets to provide her with a platform. So even though when I was writing about this a year ago, I was pointing out how she was this pioneer of this whole ridiculous, nonsensical concept of so-called online violence and importing it into the media realm, just as AOC had imported it into the realm of electoral politics. One thing I made sure to caution is that, look, don't dismiss this as a triviality. Don't assume that everybody thinks that this is a big joke. It's not a joke. It's a reflection of the genuine prevailing sentiment within the media industry, and thus gives you a big insight into why the industry is such a comical disgrace, because they elevate somebody like Taylor Lorenz to the most heralded status in their group of peers and colleagues.
There's more to this.
To male media figures. Researchers found that attacks against Lorenz went up as much as...
Do you see this? The red line is insults. The blue line are threats. The green line is toxicity. Toxicity? That's a data point? Somehow you guys have figured out what is a toxicity?
They've neutrally and objectively quantified what online toxicity consists of. That's what they would have us believe. And that's what they're actually trying to communicate here.
That's insane. Okay, here we go.
144% after just one Twitter thread. For another journalist, they went up 65%. Lorenz and
Yes, people start trending. That's called trending. Oh my God, people got attention after someone brought attention to them. What? This is nuts. None of this means anything. None of it.
No, it doesn't.
Reporter Kate Sawson say these types of attacks have changed their lives and their work.
There's reporting that I know that I would like to do, or that other journalists would like to do, that we're not able to do because it's not safe enough for us to do them.
If you need a safe
space... It's not safe enough given the tweets they will receive.
If you need a safe space to do your journalism, you're not a journalist, and this isn't cut out for you. You should go do something else. You should go sell cars, or you should go mow lawns, or you should go code. Learn to code. Journalism is not for you, okay? I don't know why you think you deserve to be fucking insulated from criticism online when you fucking tackle controversial issues, but you don't deserve that. People get to use their words as much as they want. That's okay. And this isn't for you. And you should stop trying to water down journalism and stop trying to silence dissent. Because that's what this person's doing. Trying to silence dissent. So you can go get another job. That's what you should do.
Or stop reading social media.
Or maybe stop reading social media. Guess what I do? I don't read my mentions anymore on Twitter. Why the fuck would I? So every asshole in the world gets to take a shot at me and then I have to read it? So I guess what I decided to do? I don't go on Facebook anymore. I've never gone on Instagram. And I don't read my mentions on Twitter. Problem solved. So this woman is literally saying that she can't do journalism because people will criticize her for it. Well, guess what? You're not a journalist then. You're a coddled little idiot who shouldn't be in journalism. That's what you are.
I should declare that it's no longer safe for me to comment on Ukraine because I'm inundated day after day with people telling me that I'm in league with Putin or that I'm literally compromised by the Kremlin. I mean, all these very unique and novel attacks that I've definitely just heard for the first time within the past couple weeks. And, I want to declare that it's no longer safe for me to comment, and I'm sure everyone will just solemnly nod in affirmation about the validity of my logical kind of argument there, and they'll all rush to my support.
Yeah, people, I hope,
shower praise on me for being so brave and being honest about the problem.
I hope so. I certainly, every time I tweet about or do a video about Ukraine, I get called a Putin puppet. I get called all kinds of things. Grifters, conspiracy theorists, all kinds of things that can damage your career, ruin your reputation. I don't know what. But I guess it's only, I guess if you're a special kind of snowflake, which is what these people are. They're snowflakes.
But it's only these so-called victims of harassment that then get legitimated by this whole weird complex of like NGOs. So there's this entity called what's it called? It's I lose track of these things.
Just so people know, NGO stands for
International Women's Media Foundation, right?
Okay.
So when Taylor Lorenz was first so-called under attack by Greenwald a year ago, the International Women's Foundation, which is like an NGO that's funded by all these mainline organizations and foundations, like Twitter itself gave $500,000 plus this International Women's Foundation. The guy who founded Craigslist, Craig Newmark, his philanthropic network gave $500,000. Bank of America, Ford Foundation, all these kind of John Dean, Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, all these this whole foundation philanthropic complex funds these NGOs, which then legitimize the so-called harassment claims of people like Lorenz and consecrate Lorenz as this paradigmatic example of a harassment victim, whereas obviously somebody else who is viewed as politically unacceptable would never have our harassment grievances validated, right? It's all subjective and it's all contingent on whether or not your political orientation is regarded as in line with the sensibility of these establishment groups. And clearly we're not. Clearly they are. It's in-group, out-group. Taylor Lorenz is in the in-group, and therefore her claims to grievance are sanctified and elevated. I mean, it's really nothing. It's really not that much more complicated beyond that. It's if you have the right political views and the right journalistic outlook, then we accept that your harassment claims are legitimate. And if you have the wrong political views and the wrong journalistic outlook, then you're not accepted as legitimate. That's the basic dividing line here. It's not about the harassment per se. The harassment is sort of a peripheral thing.
There's more.
And they're not alone.
This is after I did a report on an increase in the number of white supremacists running for office. Condescending journalists.
Gee, not a controversial issue at all.
Not at all.
So you're going to do an article calling people white supremacists. and you're surprised that people pushed back. It's like, why do people get to say anything when I write an article and I publish it in a widely read publication that is funded by the biggest corporations in the world, and then I get to ruin people's lives and smear them? They actually say stuff back. Can you believe that? And they're acting like this again. This happens to everyone at every turn on the internet. If you can't handle it, stay off the internet. Number 2, don't read your mentions on Twitter. You fucking glutton for punishment. Why are you reading your mentions on Twitter? Because you're a narcissist who can't help themselves. Even though you know there's going to be bad stuff in there, you keep doing it. I don't do it. But this is them being narcissists and entitled, right? So these are rich kids. Do those people who they're featuring in this thing look like they came from a blue-collar neighborhood and they had to scrap to get into school or college? Or no, these are people of privilege. And Taylor Lorenz is the biggest privileged person in the world.
Also, no, I mean, this intrepid MSNBC reporter is showing examples of just random people expressing annoyance that she castigated them as evil. So notice she's not proud of antagonizing people who actually hold power.
Right.
She's proud of antagonizing, or I don't even know if she's proud of it. Maybe she's almost fearful of having in her target these just random ordinary people who, I mean, if they feel you've wrongfully maligned them as white supremacists and they don't agree with that interpretation, they're probably going to object. But look, I mean, and for some reason now that entitles her to screenshot these comments a year onward and use that as evidence that she's somehow uniquely victimized by online vitriol. I mean, why not hold up examples of like government officials or corporate officials or somebody who actually wields more power than the ability to write a comment on like a discus comment feed? Because they don't actually antagonize people in positions of power. You know, when I get attacked by these weapons contractor types and these, security consultants and these other spooks and war profiteers, as I have been for the past couple of weeks, because I've been putting out stuff that they don't like, I actually take it as validation and a sign that I'm on the right track when they launch into a frenzy and, try to barrage me with their furious trolling, because it shows that maybe I'm,
over the target,
headed in the right direction. Whereas for them, I mean, because they target the powerless, it doesn't actually show anything of value is resulting from their work, other than now they have this ability to kind of superficially point to mean comments as vindication of their journalism.
And I would love to know what is their solution for this? So you're going to get a mean tweet after you call people evil and white supremacists, and then people call you names back.
The solution is more and more censorship on their behalf. That's what this Internet Women's Center group ultimately recommended in response to Taylor Lorenz being subject to this harassment from Greenwald and Tucker Carlson, right? They were calling on the tech companies, and so did PEN America, supposedly this bastion of free expression. They also weighed in with a report on women in media being, tormented with online harassment. And they all have the same ultimate prescription. It's that the tech companies need to impose greater censorship to accommodate the victimized journalists because they're women/POC. That's the ultimate thing that they're proposing. So that's what they want done. They want more control. I mean, it's a power play ultimately, right? They're using this new rhetoric around trauma, around online harm and stuff, because it's this kind of faddish nomenclature that they have domain over. And when they invoke it, they're able to extract concessions from powerful institutions, including the tech companies, which then will make adjustments to the very systems to better, supposedly protect them from this abuse. But really what it does is it grants them greater power over the actual mechanics of the tech platforms. And they've gradually gotten that. I mean, the tech companies have gradually acceded to these people. So it works. I mean, it's a emotional blackmail tactic, but it actually works. So in a way, it's rational for them to continue banging this drum.
Okay, let's just finish this video.
It deserves a rope. Obviously, I'm a person of color. Obviously, there's a reference to a noose. Are you getting messages like these?
Yep. Hey, nice job on that story, you soulless
Taylor Lorenz a person of color?
Then also you'll see there's
no, but the other woman is.
There's many people that are tweeting, these are Taylor Lorenz's loved ones.
They have
everyone.
photos. Wow, these are all photos of your family members.
Yeah,
children.
They'll threaten children. They'll threaten my parents. I've had to remove every single social tie. I had severe PTSD from this. I contemplated suicide. It got really bad.
Hold on.
You feel like any little piece of information that gets out on you will be used by the worst people on the internet to destroy your life. And it's so isolating.
And terrifying.
It's horrifying. I'm so sorry. It's overwhelming. It's really hard.
That had to be
Steph,
big,
does that make you upset?
Now, Chuck, we reached out to Glenn Greenwald and Fox News about this study.
Greenwald
part. Responded saying in part, as a member of various marginalized groups, I don't want or accept some special immunity shield against being criticized, and no journalist with any dignity or worth should want that either. Neither Tucker Carlson.
Well, at least they showed Glenn's response, which was nice, and but they don't comment on it.
And they don't allow Glenn to read all the mean tweets he's ever received.
No, Glenn doesn't get to read his mean tweets. But I would like to show you. So did you see that part Taylor Lorenz cut? They're using my family. I have to. That's what Taylor Lorenz does. So I'm just going to give you one example of the horribleness of Taylor Lorenz. This is just one example of her being a complete hypocrite. She's accusing people of doing the exact thing she does, but with a much bigger platform. She actually is worse than the people who come at her on Twitter. Taylor Lorenz is worse than the people who come at her on Twitter. This is her article, Taylor Lorenz article, going after someone's family. So the headline is, the Instagram stars hiding their famous Muslim-hating mom. So she's going after Instagram's people's stars' family. She's going after their family. That thing she just was crying about, that thing she was just crying about, the phony, faking liar, and she is a liar. She does the exact thing, but on a much bigger platform. She's not doing it as a rando on Twitter that nobody has to look at, see, or read. She's doing it in major publications. So Glenn Greenwald showed that he's the one who caught this. It says, girl with no job, Jackie OP problems, and the rest of Instagram's famous family have gone to great lengths to conceal the identity of their Islamophobic mother. So she's digging in people's families. She's doing this. That thing she just cried about. Here's what she tweeted. If I could give one piece of advice to aspiring journalists, it would be to never reveal anything about your personal life on the internet. Nothing, ever. Unfollow and block family members and those closest to you. Never post photos of anyone or anything you care about. A decade down the line or sooner, these things will all be used to try to ruin your life. People on the internet will brigade you on every platform and dig up every single tiny thing you've ever revealed and try to exploit it to cause you excruciating pain. You mean like when you eavesdrop on people's private conversation and misreport that they use the R word? You mean like that? Yes, that's what you mean, right? That thing that you do for a living? Well, here she is doing it. In fact, she's doing that. She's trying to go after people who are influencers online after their family. And the people that she did that to, says Oshri sisters, have gone to great lengths to conceal their connection to their mother. Family photos, including their mother, have been stripped from their Instagrams. All past references to her have been removed. The sisters post family photos of the four of them, always without their mother. That's Taylor Lorenz. She is berating them for doing the exact thing she just gave everybody advice to do. She's berating these people for trying to keep their family out of their online life. Isn't that what she just told you to do? Yes, it is. And here she is berating those very people for doing the things she advised you to do. Update. Claudia Oshri provided this statement to the Daily Beast after the story's publication. We want to be clear to our audience and fans that our political and cultural beliefs are not anti-Muslims or anti-anyone. Our views are separated from our mothers. Being raised by a single parent, we were taught to make our own choices based on our own personal beliefs. We are inspired to think for ourselves, and we do. We do not condone discrimination or racist beliefs of any kind. So she's doing the exact thing. There's Taylor Lorenz doing the exact thing she's literally crying about on camera, which is why you know that's fake. Or she's a psychopath. I'm going to guess both. She's doing the exact thing. Michael, am I wrong? Am I misinterpreting that Taylor Lorenz did the exact thing that she's claiming that woman did, that she... Anyway, let me go one more.
Well, I mean, I think the idea here is that anyone who she would feel compelled to report on is a legitimate target, whether for political reasons or, because they harbor, frowned upon political views. So whoever she might target is legitimate, and therefore journalistic means can be employed to ferret out all possible information on them, including through their familial connections. But she doesn't regard herself as a legitimate target, right? Because she's this paradigm of all that is good in the world. She's the paradigm of virtuous journalism. She's on the side of the angels. She has all the right cultural kind of connections and political beliefs, and therefore, it's out of bounds for anyone to ever target her in the same way that she's targeted others. I think that's kind of just this reflective of this presumption of her morally exalted status, and it helps also explain why she views her experience with this purported harassment as such an exaggerated object of interest that she's constantly carrying on about. I mean, this has been over a year now.
She won't stop talking about this.
This is like her number one journalistic beat, her own harassment, her own Twitter mentions and email inbox. Like, that's the number one thing that she pops up as covering journalistically. And so it's this weird feedback loop cycle where she does something ridiculous, it provokes a backlash, and then she reports on that backlash as though it's this journalistic revelation that somehow reflects on the rest of society and how everybody needs to get serious about mitigating harassment to protect her personally. Because, again, she doesn't feel that she should ever be subject to the kind of scrutiny that she subjects others to. And that's the conceit that you often see amongst elite journalists who kind of view themselves in this untouchable kind of strata where they should be insulated from critique, really.
Yes.
Even if they themselves apply just as much of a strenuous, if not more strenuous, of a critique to others who are less than desirable.
Well, I just want to show you. When you call her an elite journalist, she's not a great journalist. She's elite because she comes from the elite. That's what I think you mean. Well, yeah. She's not actually.
Whenever I say elite, I kind of always mean it presumptively as a pejorative.
Privileged, yes, privileged.
Well, elite in the sense that, like, if you work for if you write front page stories for the New York Times and you're poached to the Washington Post after coming up the ranks through the Daily Beast and the Atlantic, for better or worse, almost overwhelmingly worse, you're considered to have associated yourself with prestige conferring institutions, right? So if you were the New York Times, you could put fear in the hearts of lots of people and get your phone calls returned real quickly, because if you take them to task in the New York Times, that could be a significant reputational damage for them. So I call her elite just to kind of reflect this certain rarefied segment of the media industry where working for one of these major outlets is considered a marker of one's high status. And and she keeps rising through the ranks. I mean, she is encouraged to continue with this track. So this is exactly apparently what is incentivized now within the media industry. She's the leading example of what it takes to actually be so-called elite. Now, I think that probably in a broader sense should mean that you shouldn't strive to be elite, because it means that you're just kind of a dope and that you're actually harming society. But this is what people within this sphere regard as elite. It's all embodied by Taylor Lorenz.
All right, so let me close out this segment because we're spending too much time on her. But it's a bigger point.
It's so fun, though.
But it's a bigger point that I want to make, right? So that it's not necessarily just Taylor Lorenz, but this is pervasive now, and this is a big call for more censorship, and that's what they're doing. Yeah. This is more control by the establishment. This is more control to Silicon Valley, which is in bed with the politicians, right? With the Democratic Party. So this is what Glenn Green. You want to know how elite Taylor Lorenz actually is? He said Glenn Greenwald says it is almost impossible to envision a single individual in whom power, privilege, and elite prerogative reside more abundantly than Taylor Lorenz. Using the metrics of elite liberal culture, the word privilege was practically invented for her. A rich, straight white woman from a wealthy family raised in Greenwich, Connecticut, and educated in actual Swiss boarding schools, who now writes about people's lives, often casually destroying those lives, on the front pages of the most powerful East Coast newspapers on the planet. That's who she is. That's who Taylor Lorenz is, which is why she's not cut out for the real fucking world, which is why she needs a nanny state or a daddy to come and protect her from mean things people are saying on Twitter after I ruin their lives, call them evil and white supremacists. And then they say things about me and I have to read them? You're made to read them? No one has to read the things people tweet at you. All right? That's you doing it on purpose for your own self-aggrandizement. And now you're a darling of the wackadoo left who thinks that censorship is good. There's a lot of people on the left who think censorship is good. That's not me. Okay. And by the way,
they never actually say censorship is good, right? They always couch it as safety is good.
Right.
Or you need to protect the vulnerable and the marginalized. And even if what they're implicitly or even explicitly calling for is censorship, they never frame it as such, because censorship is kind of a unpleasant thing to be avowedly in favor of. So it's always about this one of the like therapeutic, moralizing objectives about protecting people who are otherwise marginalized and going to be subjected to this torrent of abuse if we don't step in and basically parentally insulate them from these harms.
So here's a real victim. Here's a real female victim. A female journalist died last month covering the war. And these psychopaths are mourning Taylor Lorenz. So there you go. And there's a lot more.
And also, I think Jimmy, just real quick, I think you were right to try to emphasize that this really ought not to be about Taylor Lorenz as such. Yeah, she's a caricature, and she's comical in how perfectly she kind of typifies a lot of this ridiculous journalism elite mentality, in that she literally went to a Swiss boarding school and all that. Which is like hilarious. But the most important thing from a broader perspective is that the kind of nomenclature that she's helped to mainstream around so-called online violence, around harassment being this systemic scourge that must be combated, this is another avenue that elite journalists are pursuing to demand censorship, and it's working. Right? They're getting it institutionally legitimized by NGOs, by governments, by elected officials, by international bodies. Even the UN endorsed an aspect of this last year, last I looked into it. Right? So this isn't really just about everybody having a nice laugh at Taylor Lorenz's expense. It's that this reflects a consensus opinion amongst the media industry, and is one weapon in their arsenal to stifle speech, right? To engage in the kind of corporate censorship purges that we saw really go crazy after January 6th when they got rid of Trump, and they've been gradually ramping it up, maybe a little bit more subtly since then, but nonetheless, it's still going strong. I mean, and the standards that are introduced to accommodate their grievances, of course, have zero consistency whatsoever. I was just pointing out earlier today that Twitter is allowing this freelance American, essentially mercenary, running around Ukraine to crowdfund on Twitter, and PayPal and Venmo are allowing him to collect money, where he's basically orchestrating an arms trafficking initiative over Twitter. People send him money so he can what he says he's doing is driving around Ukraine in a pickup truck with a machine gun mounted on it to fight Russia. But that's not violence, apparently. That's not an incitement of violence. That's not behavior that's likely to produce real world harm. That's just A-OK according to all the tech platforms for some reason. But somebody overly harshly criticizing Tale of the Wrens, that's a moral panic that needs to be addressed by new censorship mechanisms introduced at these platforms. So, of course, there's zero consistency whatsoever. It's always a sheer power play. And for better, and unfortunately, people as disreputable and annoying as Tale of the Wrens have more and more power within the industry, and they set the terms of the debate.
Michael Tracy's been our guest. You can check out his work at mtracy.substack.com. Thanks so much for being our guest, Michael. It's been great to see you.
Always a rollicking good time, Jimmy.
Hey, we're doing our live stand-up tour. We're going to be in Orlando. We're going to be in Tampa, Columbus, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, much, much more. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets. And you can come see our shows in Los Angeles, too. We do one weekly. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com and become a premium member while you're there. Get all the extra content. Thank you.